Right then, friends, we are back here on CubCamTV, and we are joined by a very special guest. Miz Media is on the line with us today. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's exciting doing this YouTube collab stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like, you've never done it before. I've never done it before. I think it's something that's really good to start with, definitely. So, very excited.
There we go. So, we're going to run through what we are actually going to be doing today, which is something very exciting. It's the first time we've kind of done something like this. If you can see my screen right now, there's about 1,000 different things going on, but it's we're trying to keep it cool and steady. Obviously, we're both people who write quite a lot and get involved with interviews within the grime scene, so I thought this would be a cool thing to do. As you can see, this is the big review. So, what we're going to be doing is ranking grime albums. Now, we've got a load on our list. I've got a funny feeling it's going to be quite a fun thing to do because there's going to be there's definitely a couple on here which I don't rate quite highly that I have a funny thing you'll rate, and I know there's going to be a couple the other way around. So, yeah. It's going to be fun. So as you can see, we've got 5 categories. We've got reload every time. We've got banger. We've got solid. We've got nostalgic plays only. And we've got wouldn't listen again. So they're pretty self-explanatory for where the albums are. So should we make a start?
Let's go for it.
Let's go for it. So first on the list today is Lethal Bizzle with Back to Business. Now, I won't lie. It's quite funny this one's popped up first because this for me isn't necessarily an album I remember.
Neither, and I don't know whether it's because I was only 10 when it came out, or it's just not an album that's like popped up often throughout like my musical career. It's not something that I would like think of and be like, hey, that's a banger of an album.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming on there. It's got a couple of the early Lethal Bizzle bangers on there. So the tune wise, there's a couple of tunes on there that you're gonna still hear. But I don't know if that as an album it could be classed as one of those more sort of higher tiered releases.
I don't know. I think something that it's got going for it that's strong is that it's only 13 tracks. So, like, it's quite a short album. So, like, you don't get like, overly bored listening to it or anything. But, like, there's not really many tracks that you would remember to, like, put on a playlist or anything like that. Like, there's no, like, hard-hitting tracks on it. Which...
Yeah. So how do you think we should do this? Because this is the first one. This is going to set the tone for the rest of the entire thing. So it's an interesting one to start off with. I'm leaning towards going on nostalgic plays only.
See, I was a bit of a nerd and wrote like notes. You can't even see it, but I wrote so many.
That's amazing.
So what I've got for this is that it's solid, but I would say that it sort of goes more into nostalgic. Like, it's not something that you pick out to listen to. But if it's an album that you remember, like, from your youth or, like, your teenage years, then it might be something that you'd go back to for, like, the odd song or so. Yeah,
I think it's definitely a preference one. I think definitely between solid and nostalgic plays is where this sits. You know what? We can always move them around a little bit later on. As we've both said, it's kind of between. I'm leaning more towards nostalgic. I think we'll go nostalgic to begin with, and then if we'll have a look as it goes on and see what pops up next. So there we go. First one done. We've only got about another 30 to get through, so this is going to be a real piece of cake. So next on the list, we have Bashi with the Chupa Chups mixtape. I mean, this is... there's a lot we can say about this.
Yeah, so... Let me find my notes on this. I actually don't have many notes on this because it's like a 29-track album. And to sit there and write notes on every song would be absolutely ridiculous. So, I think the downside to this album is that it's so long. It's like I think it's like 85 minutes running time or something like that. That's a lot of time.
Even for then, for a mixtape, that's a long period of time.
Yeah. It's so crazy, but the worst thing is there's so many iconic tunes on that album that like they sort of get lost in all of the other ones because there's just so much.
Yeah, I mean it does kind of boil down to how we're judging them. We're judging them as like bodies of work, like as a project, rather than the singles that are on there. Because I mean, if we're going for memorable tracks on there, I mean, I'd think it'd go into reload every time. Like realistically, I think that's where it would sit. But if we're judging it as a body of work, I think it sits between solid and banger purely because there's a lot of stuff that can be taken away from it, more so than there's a lot of things that don't have to be there. But then that's what makes it the Chupa Chups tape, you know. So it's a difficult one to kind of throw. What are you thinking, kind of ranking wise?
I had solid because obviously if you love Bashi, you're gonna love this album because it's literally just an overload of Bashi. But like if you're not like say like a hardcore fan or like you're just sort of getting into grime, it might be something that's like a bit too too busy for you. But as a body of work, it is super solid. Like, obviously, he has the content to be able to make 29 tunes just for one mixtape, so it's definitely a solid body of work.
You know what, I think I'm going to agree with you on solid. I've got a funny feeling a fair few people are going to be annoyed at that one going into solid, but you know what, we're breaking it down, and obviously if there are any kind of differing opinions, please do let us know in the comment section below. We're going to have 2 of these videos. There's going to be one on my channel and one on Miz Media's channel as well, so there's going to be, you can look at both of them, and it's going to be quite fun to bring it all together towards the end. So there we go. So next on the list, an interesting one. This is the thing about this, there's a lot of interesting picks on here. We did go through and work out a list beforehand of albums to bring into this. There's probably a few we've missed out, but we've done the best we can. Next on the list, Da Vinci with Dirty Canvas.
This, in my opinion, is such an important album, and I sort of, it was really cool going through like the list, because this obviously is the only instrumental album.
Of course, yeah.
So it was like quite a nice sort of breather, I suppose, from all of the grime that I was listening to. Like, it was nice to just sit there and listen to some really cold 140 instrumentals.
Yeah. I think as a project, I mean, I've done a top 5s on Da Vinci, and I mean, when I was looking through, it was difficult to not just include 5 tunes off this album. It's one of those kind of standout. It's one of those standout projects where you'll have artists who have like most of their best songs on one album, and then they never really hit that point again. I'm not saying that's the case with Da Vinci, because I think he has obviously played significant parts in bangers like down the years. But I think this was an album that really kind of set the benchmark for grime. You know, it was an album that kind of went, this is an instrumental grime album, this is what grime sounds like when you don't have the vocals, this is what you can almost expect to hear as a vocalist before you even put anything down. So I think for me, I won't lie, I'm quite biased towards this, because my favourite grime instrumental of all time is a Da Vinci one that's on this album, so I'm going to be a little bit biased. But I think it is, I can't put it lower than a banger. I'm going to struggle to put it lower than banger.
I put it down as Reload every time.
A Reload every time.
Like, Da Vinci was a pioneer in like the production aspect of the grime scene, so like you can't put it really any lower than like a banger or every time. Like,
I mean that's the thing. If you I think iconic is the best word to describe it, because as an instrumental project, like how many instrumental projects do we hear that last 10+ years instrumental wise? There's a couple of LPs from Rude Kid that you could put in that category. Maybe a couple of the Wiley tape, the earlier instrumental Wiley tapes that kind of dropped like behind the scenes or whatever. But as an album, I don't think there is another grime instrumental album that's done as much as this. So I think there we go. We're going to go.
Yeah, Reloads every time, definitely.
I think
especially like as time's going on, like producers are much less inclined to like put out instrumental tapes and everything, because obviously people are sort of going to steal them and everything. So like it was like really important, like even though it was 2005, for like someone to put a project out like that, which is just purely grime instrumentals, because like producing is such an important part of grime. Because without it, you wouldn't have any of the beats. So
yeah.
I think it is like a proper solid.
I think as well, just sonically, like the sound he came with, the horns, the kind of skippy instrumentals, everything about this it just like screams nostalgia. It literally takes me back to when I was a kid listening to grime for the first time, and that feeling that I first got when like hearing Phase, for instance, that instrumental. Whenever I hear Phase, I'm literally just like the nostalgia just floods back. Yeah, I couldn't put it any lower than banger, so I'm happy you've said Reload every time. There we go, first Reload of the day. We are 3 in. This is good fun. I like doing this. We need to do this with singles and maybe even artists, but I feel that might get a little bit techie at one point.
I wish you can go on for hours just talking about one. Look.
Okay, so next one is one of the most recent additions to this list, which should be interesting, which I think it's a couple of years old at this point. DWE's Jackham as an album.
Jackham. When did that come out? 2018?
I think it's late. I think it's mid to late 2018, if memory serves me correctly. So yeah, as a project, I mean, how are we kind of ranking this? Because there's only so much sort of nostalgic factor we can give it, because it's quite new, so it almost accidentally loses out on those points.
Yeah, I feel like because it's new, it sort of like nods to the nostalgia of obviously old D-Double's work, but like his whole style and like his tone and like his flow, nothing's really like massively changed over the course of the years. So there will always be that nod to nostalgia, because like, you'll always come with like the well-known bars and the sound effects and everything like that. So I feel like it is nostalgic in a sense, even though it's a lot newer.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually, because I think D-Double's clever with that. Like, he understands, he has a nostalgic factor about him regardless of what he does. So I definitely agree with you on that. He's almost kind of like worked that kind of idea of nostalgia into anything he says anyway. So you almost get those kind of throwbacks to his original sound because his sound hasn't changed too much over the years. It's interesting because obviously the whole way through there's a couple of tunes that are more standout, but I'd say it's just a classic. It's an album of singles you would describe as D-Double singles, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly.
So it's a funny one. I don't think we can put it into reload every time, if I'm honest.
I actually put it into banger.
Yeah.
It is like a really, really good piece of work, but it's not something that I, again, would like pick out and want to listen to every single song like in a row. Sort of way. Like there's a few on there like Nang and like Trippin' and like songs like that I would like pick out and like stick on like a workout playlist or something.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a banger, but I don't know, like as a body of work.
I think more than anything, because it's this is something I say a lot. I would describe this as a grime album. You know, it's a very, very good grime album, which is what we're doing here. And it's almost bizarre because the tone is very similar throughout. You know, and that's D-Double. He always has a similar kind of approach. But when we kind of break it down as an album, does that almost take away the fact that it's very similar all the way through? Does that almost take away from it being leveled up to that next kind of level, or is it? Or is that does that kind of take away from it being a grime album? You know, it's a difficult kind of thing. I mean, I'd agree with you on banger, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, it is definitely a grime album. Obviously, it has like touches and splashes of like different genres, and like with like the skits throughout, like the Stormin' skit, that obviously it sort of breaks it up and sort of like introduces the other subgenres that go alongside grime, and sort of like how he has incorporated all of that into his sounds. But like overall, he is one of the best grime MCs. He will always make some of the best grime music. And
entirely.
I don't think he'll be able to make anything that isn't like overall a grime album. It's just what he does. It's who he is.
Definitely. I think we're going to go for banger then. I think that sits quite perfectly there. So far we've got one in every category. This is interesting. This is going to be. I mean, it's going to be funny if we see any in Wouldn't Listen Again. That would be an unusual one to kind of see. Let's jump into the next one. Now, this is very interesting because this. I don't know how this one's going to go. Gets freedom of speech.
Okay.
Now, this was a project. This was the project for me that made me really kind of gets, you know. This was the project for me that I kind of went, okay, this is what we're dealing with. Obviously, I'd heard Ghetto Gospel and it was good, and I heard 2000 Life at the time and it was good. But it wasn't for me. It wasn't really screaming out to what I was interested in at the time. There was a lot more kind of hip hop influence in there. There was a lot of kind of very different styles of instrumental in there that I wouldn't necessarily have ever classed as that sort of classic grime sound. And then obviously Top 3 Selected was on Ghetto Gospel, and there were a few other like sort of early grime bangers on there, but this was when it kind of became okay, I know what I feel what Gets is doing now. I'm fully with it. How about yourself?
I feel like this is sort of the album where he sort of established his style more. Like obviously, like Gets is really good at making like conceptual tunes, and obviously like a few of them start to pop up on this album, like Commandments. I think like it really starts to show like how Gets is like molding his style and sound into sort of expressing himself in a really raw way that people will still understand, and I think that's what makes his album so great.
Definitely. I think. I mean, there's two tracks on there that really stand out for me. One being Bus One. I mean, that's a tune that's like near enough impossible to kind of miss in Gets' catalogue. He still uses the sort of bars off it in live sets to this day. And Mountain as well. Mountain was a big tune for me. I really, really liked Mountain.
So what I've got that stood out to me is the Dark Side freestyle, because that's something that still gets played in my house like to this day.
Yeah.
Like that's probably like a song that I hear, I'm like, oh my god, I really, really know that song. So I feel like that's probably the one off the album that sticks out the most to me.
Okay, cool. So what are we going to go? I mean, I'm leaning towards banger. I've got to say, I'm leaning towards banger.
What I had written down was like solid/banger. So
yeah.
I'd say I was really leaning more towards the banger as well.
Yeah, okay, cool. So we've hit 2 bangers in a row. There we go. So the thing that's going to be interesting about this is when we get to the end of the list, it's going to be how do we agree that certain albums are on certain levels by the time we finished it. I think that's going to be quite a fun thing to look at. Okay, cool. Next on the list, Wiley, Godfather 1.
Okay.
That came out 2016. Was it 16? Yeah.
2016, 2017, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's around that sort of time.
A lot more recent than I actually thought it was for some reason.
I remember listening to this, and I've purposefully not put Godfather 2 in this list. Godfather 3 and Godfather 1 are both in there because I wouldn't. Godfather 2 was almost like it was just like another Wiley album for me. It didn't have that kind of classic grime feel. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Godfather 1 for me was for me, this was an album that kind of just again solidified where Wiley was. Like when I first heard this, I was lucky enough. I was driving. Well, Bush Baby was literally driving me and Drax back from Represent, back from Brixton to London when we actually sat down and listened to this for the first time. And we listened to it start to finish, and we really enjoyed it. Like I think that the layout of the album, it was just it reminded me of Playtime Is Over, which is my favorite grime album of all time, and it reminded me of that. It put a similar kind of energy on things for me, and I just think it was like a classic Wiley display more than anything else.
Yeah, definitely. So the thing is, like, between like all of like the styles and the features and everything, like it is just a really well put together grime album. Like, and especially coming from what Wiley had like previously released and like everything that he sort of had built himself up to be, like this album didn't fault any of that. Like it didn't take away from like the person that or the artist that he became. Like it's like he said, it just solidified it more. Like it just added to his character more to say like I can do everything that I can do. Like
yeah, definitely. I mean,
really good album.
I don't want to go reload every time on this one, being completely honest. I mean, I'm leaning towards banger. I think it's either solid or banger just because of the fact that this felt like Wiley literally turning around and going, right, I've had enough of all this pop stuff. I'm just coming out and doing a straight grime album. It's what I've always wanted to do anyway. That's what it felt like. It felt like almost a bit rebellious of him at the time to kind of do it and just go, look, I don't care about like the sales or getting new fans. I want to make a grime album for grime fans, and that's what it kind of felt like at the time. Where would you place this one?
I'd say solid as well, because even like at the time of release, like for the past like I'd say probably 10 years, like grime has been a bit up and down. Like is grime dead? Is grime not dead? Sort of thing. And like you said, like he just came in 2017, was basically like, fuck all of you. I'm gonna make a grime album. It's gonna be exactly like Wiley style, and it's just what everyone sort of needed. Like it's an album that was needed at that time to sort of bring back.
Almost like slap a bit of life into people who kind of, it did feel at that time as well, people were kind of like, oh, I don't know about grime. People felt almost a bit embarrassed to talk about grime, and that's how it kind of came across anyway with a lot of the time. And I felt this was an album that made people go, oh yeah, no, fair enough, we like grime still, we still like grime, yeah, fair enough. And it was kind of like a,
that's a massive perk about Wiley, because he gives zero fucks about what anyone thinks of him, and he will do exactly what he wants to do. And in a certain sense, in like a weird way, he does always prove them wrong. So if someone's like, I don't like grime is shit, he'll drop something and it will just completely like push everything
wipe it out the water. Yeah, man.
Exactly, that is like a proper like Wiley characteristic, and you have to respect it.
Yeah, you have to. There we go. We're gonna go for solid then. Okay, cool. This list is starting to heat up. So, next up. A controversial one that I think will be quite far. I think this will be quite far down the list, despite the fact that I can't really name much wrong with it. OGs with OG Season. Okay. So I remember when this came out, this was like, it was almost like a 6-7 year late response to Roll Deep. That's kind of like how it felt. because this was almost like the other side of grime. This, you kind of had the movement going on, you had Roll Deep going on, like alongside, intertwined with Boy Better Know, and then you had OGs, which was obviously Dot Rotten, P Money, Gender, Little D, Blacks, like Desperado was in there as well. Like there was a lot of I think there was a couple of other people as well that I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was this group of people that were obviously all well respected as well, like all making moves at the same time, but this was like their coming together. However, I can't name a single tune off the project.
Off the top of my head, neither can I. I can because I've got a massive list in front of me.
I'm so happy at the research, it's amazing.
You have to do it, man. You have to know what you're talking about. But yeah, exactly the same as you. Off the top of my head, I couldn't pick like a song. And I think the issue is with this, obviously it is a collective album, so there's going to be so many different people on it. And OGs at that time was actually quite a big collective of a lot of different like flavours and tones and everything. So I think that's what makes it hard to sort of like pick a song off of it and be like, oh yeah, I remember that song, because they do sort of start blurring.
Yeah, that's exactly the feeling I get.
Yeah, there's just so much going on, and like it's good because there's so much going on, but at the same time it's hard to like differentiate between what song is what, because it's grime and it has like the same people on it and it's the same sort of like instrumental style. And but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I the thing is, I'm leaning towards Wouldn't Listen Again because I'm struggling, being completely objectively honest. Like obviously all of them have what have I done there? All of them have gone on and done other things. Like Dot Rotten's gone on and done amazing things. Blacks has gone on and done some really, really cool stuff as well. P Money is obviously P Money, like there's no getting away from that. Little D's still very active. Like all of the people involved have gone on and done stuff arguably a lot better solo than they're doing it. But we're going to be talking about a lot of the other projects on here, but for the simple fact that I can't name a song off there, and I can't even realistically kind of get a vibe or like a feeling about it, I would go for Wouldn't Listen Again, purely because I have no like want to listen to it again.
Yeah, I think I'd have to say the same really. Like you can't dispute the fact that obviously all of these artists are absolutely incredible artists, and even working together, like the combination of all of their like styles and flows, it works. But because it is really busy, like, and you can't like singly pick out a thing, I would have to agree with you, to be fair.
Yeah, okay, there we go. We've got our first one. We've got one in every category at this point. It feels bad, doesn't it? But you know, you have to be objective with these things. Yeah.
I'm sorry,
sorry, OGs. But the thing is, I guarantee none of the other albums that are from OGs artists in this list will be in that bottom tier, which does kind of go back to that point of I just think all of them worked better on their own, and it almost felt like a bit of a response to a Roll Deep, a Movement, a Boy Better Know, like, oh, we all work in a similar group, let's work together. But as an album, I just don't think it particularly worked that well. But anyway, let's move on to the next one, which does happen to be along a similar line. Roll Deep, Rules and Regulations.
Okay. Where is this one? My notes are all over the show. I wrote them in such a weird order.
It's fine. No, it's all good. I think this I think Tiermaker randomizes the way the albums when they go in. I think it like puts them into. Yeah. I mean. For this one, I mean, I think I don't think it can go lower than a solid, purely because there's bangers on there that I would still play to this day. You've got Celebrate, you've got Bad Man, you've got When I'm Here, you've got I think you've got Shake a Leg as well, which is still a tune I bang out to this day. I absolutely love Shake a Leg as a tune. It was one of the first, like, it was of that era where people were making fun grime tunes. Like you had Bearman making stuff, like you had there was a couple of other like fun, like even Duppy to an extent is quite a fun grime tune at the time, you know what I mean? They're from a similar kind of era. But I'd say this one's between a solid and a banger, to be honest.
I'd probably say solid. Like I even wrote a note here saying like there's not loads of tunes that stick out to me. There's just a few, but the few that do are obviously so brilliant that it does make overall a solid body of work. That's the thing. Like I love like the excess of like the Target productions and things like that. Like it all, like if you look into like the background of this album, it is all very like set into the grime scene, and like you can't deny that it's like probably one of the best grime albums that is out there from that era of time.
Yeah, entirely. I think as well, I think looking back at what Roll Deep kind of did as a collective. Like, I think the bizarre thing about Roll Deep is how few of the original members are still kind of active, realistically. I mean, you look, Manga's still around, obviously. You've still got Wiley and Skepta, obviously. I believe Flowdown was Roll Deep, wasn't he?
As far as I'm aware,
yeah, I'm pretty sure he's still very active, doing things a little bit more abstract, I'd say. With Flowdown, he's working in a bit more of a sort of abstract sort of 140 realm. But I mean, most of the people from Roll Deep are still quite active. There's a few that have kind of like sort of tailed off, like a Scratchy and a Breeze to an extent. Like, they're not as active, although I see them pop up occasionally. They're not like super active. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll agree with you on a solid on that one. I think that's a fair rating on this one. We've already been going 25 minutes. Okay, cool. We're going to do a couple more, and then we'll finish up this episode, and then we're going to move over to Miz's channel and do the second one over on there, which is going to be fun. This is enjoyable though. I'm enjoying it as a process. We've still got a fair few to get through. So let's do next. Skepta, greatest hits.
Greatest hits. Okay, so this album isn't particularly one of my favourites. I wouldn't say it's an album actually filled with Skepta's greatest hits, which is weird. See, like, at that time, that probably was like the body of work that he wanted to put out to say, hey, these are my greatest hits. Like, it's quite old. I think that was like 2007.
Yeah, I think that the timing on this one was a madness, because I remember when this dropped, just in like a response to that, these were his greatest hits at the time. Like, he'd already been active for like 6-7 years or whatever, but when this dropped, it was kind of like bang, like Duppy was on there, it's like all of those ones from that time, and I can't even remember. There was another tune on there as well. It had the infamous Malia skit on there as well, or Iron Apple. Was it the Iron Apple skit or that skit? Yeah, the Iron Apple skit is on there, which is kind of like, which is a madness to kind of think about that got actually released on a like a mainstream album. I remember buying this from HMV. Like, that's how like far back I remember this. I think this was the third Grime album I ever like actually went out and bought, and I had it loaded into Juiced 2 on my Xbox and had it running as the radio in the background. I remember it like nobody's business. So obviously I've got fond memories of it.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, like, it's things like that you can look back and actually pinpoint moments in your life, and you're like, I remember that album like being sort of prevalent during that time of my life, like, and I think I'd say it's like a nostalgic play because of that. Like,
I mean, are we gonna put greatest hits and nostalgic plays only? Because I'll be honest, there's only one tune off it to this day that I would still play, being 100%, and that's Duppy. So I mean, are we actually gonna do this? Are we gonna put greatest hits in nostalgic plays only? Because when we break it down, that's where it kind of sits.
It sits in the nostalgic category because of like the time it was released, and like in hindsight, obviously looking back, like it's quite nostalgic. But like overall, because it's not something that like you would draw for due to your nostalgia, it's only like going to be like the one-off tune or so. Say it's solid, maybe.
I think, you know what, we'll go solid, and if solid gets too full, we'll go solid, and if solid gets too full, it's the first nomination to go down.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. I was gonna say we're gonna end up putting Skepta's first album in nostalgic plays only. Oh, we're gonna get in trouble. But anyway, let's crack on. So next up on this list we have Dot Rotten, R.I.P. Young Dot. Now I have very specific feelings towards this, so I'll let you go first on this one.
I don't know if I want to, because I don't know whether your specific feelings are good or bad.
Oh,
I do think it's a good album. Like, I really, I liked Dot Rotten like back then. Like, I liked that era of Dot Rotten. Like, not so much now, which is quite unfortunate. But there's a few tracks on there. Like, MCs Don't Bother Me. Like, the things that like he spoke about in that track. Like, it's weird to see how like it's sort of mirrored even like now. And I think like in a sense he was a bit ahead of his time.
I'd agree, 100%.
Sort of maybe not appreciated within the scene that he was in at that time, and I think obviously that's sort of what led to his like ultimate downfall. But I do think it's a good album. Like, it's easy listening. Like, you can stick it on in the background and like not really get bored. But I wouldn't say it's something that I'd be like, that's like a top 5 album. Like, it's just like, it's a good album.
I mean, this is where it's interesting, because this is in my top 5 Grime albums. Like quite substantially. So this is the first one where there's a big bit of difference. For me, There's a couple of things about this album that really stand out. I think the features on this album were this for me almost felt like how good the OG's album should have been.
Yeah, that's a really good way to explain it.
Because it was the similar group of artists. Obviously, you had P Money involved. Pretty sure Voltage was on there. You had Brutal involved. You had Shimmer as well, who only ever put a tune out on this album, as far as I'm aware, after doing the Westwood freestyle, which kind of was mad. And then this kind of came out, and this had Pain and Strife on there, which was Dot Rotten and Shimmer. And I remember that dropping and being like, "Oh my God, Shimmer's on the album," and it being an absolute madness. But yeah, like kind of looking back on it, this is in my top 5. So I think this is going to be an interesting compromise, because I would say it's either Reload Every Time or Banger. But obviously with yourself, you're more leaning towards solid / nostalgic by the sounds of things.
See, I did have it down as like Banger / solid, because obviously there are tunes on there that like really like caught me.
Yeah.
When like sort of warming to Dot Rotten as an artist. But it doesn't fit in my top 5, definitely not. So we are very different on that one. But it is a really good album. Like,
yeah.
I feel like Dot Rotten was like so underappreciated throughout his like career, and it just sort of makes me want to give him a hug and put him in a high category. So.
I think we're kind of, it's looking like we're kind of leaning towards Banger here. I think through the kind of breakdown together. I think the one thing to say about Dot Rotten is he is, alongside Gets, for me, without a doubt, the best natural rapper in grime. Those two are the best natural. When I say rapping, I mean the physical process of performance, like vocal tones, breath control, all of the, even muscle memory of like of using syllables and stuff like that. They're the two for me that are the by far the furthest out there. And I think obviously with those two have clashed, haven't they? I'm pretty sure they've clashed.
I'm actually not too sure about that.
If they haven't, then I'll be surprised. But yeah, those two for me are like the two that are out there. But I think this album was, for the time, it was quite like it was, you know what it is? It was so solid, pardon the pun, for the time. Like it was. I couldn't find any flaws in it at the time, which is probably lending to the nostalgic value of me kind of going, "Oh, I remember it being great." And da, da, da. In fairness, I haven't listened to it in a while, but I have a feeling if I was to listen back to it, I would just sit there and go da, 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 like the entire way through, because it's just constant, like a barrage of an album. I mean, I'm gonna go Banger if you're cool to go Banger on this one.
I'll go Banger on it.
I think we'll go Banger.
To it back like 2 days ago when I was listening to it, like you can't fault it. It's a bloody good album, and knowing that it came out in like them like late 2000 times, it's a really good album to have come out there. Not even like production wise, like engineering on it, really not even that bad. Like.
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing we have to kind of look into it as well. Dot Rotten on the production side of things. It's also, I'm pretty sure it's at least nearly entirely self-produced as well, which you have to then take into account and go, okay, wow, that it kind of adds an extra layer to it. So yeah, I think we'll go Banger on that one. Right, so we've got time for 2 more if we move quite quickly, I think. And yeah, we've got time for 2 more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Pick 1 or 2, and then pick between 1 and 11.
Okay,
2, and then pick between 1 and 11. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Interesting.
Okay, what we got?
We've got Gets with Ghetto Gospel, the New Testament.
Ooh, okay.
Now this is an interesting one, because is this a grime album? No. So that
as a whole, it's not a grime album.
No, that's what I mean. There's you've got like Preach on there, which is like a grime banger, obviously with the nail on the hook, and there's a couple of like most of the standout tunes on there are at least near to grime, but I don't know if I'd class it as an overall grime album. So are we ranking this on it being a grime album, or are we ranking it as an overall album by a grime artist?
I'd say an overall album by a grime artist, because like Gets has proved himself year after year after year that he has the skill and the talent to be one of the best. Like, and I think this album sort of just confirms that he doesn't have to do grime to be one of the best. And
I
it's
agree
nice to see him like get more into a mode of expression, and you can tell like that's how he wants to express himself rather than just keeping himself into one genre to make people happy. And I think that's really important, that he is like making music that he actually wants to make.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's a funny one for me because when this dropped, this is one of my favorite. But I can't call it a grime album. That's the thing. It's one of my favorite UK artist albums I've ever heard, like quite easily. But I don't know. I honestly don't know where I can place it, because I'm kind of looking at it going, it's difficult to kind of get around that thing of, am I judging it for grime value or overall value? And obviously we've said we're judging it by now as an album by a grime artist, but that puts it immediately into banger. Is it as good a grime out as it, if we were to put it alongside R.I.P. Young Dot, Freedom of Speech, and Jackham? Are they in the same category as albums? I think they are.
We should have made a category for albums that aren't grime albums. Why did you do that?
I don't know. Might have to do it for the next list we do. Just and what we should have done is do an NA. I think that would have been a good thing, like a not applicable, and put it in there. But yeah, I mean it's between banger and solid, I think, purely because there are tunes on there that aren't grime, that aren't like, because we can't class it as a grime album. I don't think we can put it into number one, into that top spot on the big review ranking grime albums. I don't think that's that. I don't really think that'd be fair on the other albums. So I think we go either banger or solid.
See, I'd say banger in the sense of that overall it's a good album, but then I'd say solid in the sense of it being like a grime album. Because, like, there are like the few touches of grime throughout, and the touches that there are really fucking good.
Yeah.
So, I'll say solid.
I'm leaning towards solid. We'll go solid purely because I think we have to be very clear on this. We're rating it for the grime aspect. Like, how representative is it of grime? And the grime representation on there is solid. I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Right, we've got time for one more. I can see them, so it makes it quite difficult. Okay, well, we'll switch things up a little bit, and we will go Frisco Peng Food.
Okay. This is like at the bottom. So I've actually got quite a few notes for this one. I think this is a really well put together album. When I was younger, I probably didn't rate Frisco as much as I should have.
He's definitely someone that grows on every grime fan over time. Like, he starts off in that sort of, like, I don't want to say misc category, but he's almost like he's not as appreciated as he should be by newcomers, but the more you kind of listen to him and see what he does, he grows and grows and grows and grows and gets higher up your list every time. I'd probably have him in my top 5 to listen to now, just because I like the way he puts himself across.
I probably would as well, to be fair, especially like listening back to his albums over the past few days. Like, he really does have like such a high lyrical ability, and like it's not like masked by like sound effects or like editing or anything like that. Like, he is just like sort of straight to the line, a really bloody good lyricist. Like,
yeah.
And even though like he's not a household name, like I feel like he should definitely, like, especially like over the time now, edge up to it more, because he is bloody good. So.
Yeah, I agree, man. I completely agree. So with this as an album, like, I remember this being, I mean, it was I think this was very like advertised as being an always recording album. Like, I remember that being like a big thing about it when it dropped. It was one of their it was along, like, Chipmunk was involved at the time, and I think it was Frisco and someone, and there was another person as well that were like the 3 leading people from Always Recordings. It might have been Double S possibly at the time. I'm not too sure, but I remember that being a big thing on this, and I think as a project, it really represented where grime was. Like, this was a proper cool underground album. It had a lot of unique kind of flavors. Again, I think Frisco is one of the kind of very in the middle artists when it comes to kind of using patois in grime as well. Like, he will dip in and out of patois really well, and it adds a whole extra layer to the way he writes and the way he kind of sounds rap wise. And I think this is a perfect example of how to utilize that in like long form. And I mean, for me, I think most things on this album will be between banger and solid. I think that's what we're getting around to, but I don't know if I can go banger on it, purely because I don't know if any of the tunes hold up today, because I've got to admit it's not an album that I find myself listening to on a regular basis.
I put it down as solid because there's actually only 2 tunes of the whole album that I picked out as something that like I would listen to on a daily basis. One of them's Them Never Know, and that's because of that Killer P feature.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. If that was to go off in a rave now, oh my god. Like,
yeah, it'd bang.
And the other one is Lyrical Skeng, because like it sort of like shows you like the background of Frisco and how he built himself as an MC and like sort of things he went through. But out of like, I don't know, I want to say it's like an 18-track album maybe.
Yeah, it's around them.
Too.
Yeah. So are we going to nostalgic plays then, or solid?
Oh.
Because this is the thing with this. The more I think about it, the more I'm kind of going. I can't remember a tune off there.
Yeah.
But I can't remember a tune off there. But I think fondly of it. So it's almost like is that a nostalgic feeling that I'm getting towards it? Which happens a lot with albums. There's a lot of albums I could listen back to now and kind of be like, it's not that great. But I remember liking it at the time. So I don't know. I'm sort of leaning towards nostalgic plays only. Which is mad.
Like even like down to the features that he's got, like chips on it quite a lot, which obviously like when he was like sort of growing into the chipmunk character that he was, like it was around those sort of years, like so I feel like that's quite nostalgic. Obviously like it's got like Black the Ripper on it when he was like quite like tunnel visioned on grime at that time.
Yeah, entirely.
There is so many like nostalgic elements to this album, so I'd be happy for it.
Yeah, I think we'll go to nostalgic plays early. There we go. Right, that's the first part of this video done then. So we're going to move over to Miz's channel now. Make sure you do follow my page, of course. I haven't got the subscribe button on the screen, but youtube.com/CubCamTV. Hit the subscribe button. Of course, hit like on the video. You can see both of our ats on the screen as well. Follow us on socials. We're very vocal about grime and our our writings and things that are going on. And yeah, that's it from us for this time. So don't go anywhere. Keep it locked. CubCamTV, and go and check out the other video in the description. Peace.